All right, guys, we're back with the legendary Joe Giglia from Elk Bros. There exists a threat, from anti-hunting groups to politicians trying to give our land away, and we won't stand for it. Those vast western landscapes provide the space for our wildlife to thrive and a place for hunters and anglers to fuel the fire that sparks their soul. In this show, we share our love of hunting, fishing, and conservation. Here, we provide the foundation to meet these threats through passion and the grit of the American outdoorsman. Welcome to the Western Huntsman Podcast. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this episode of the Western Huntsman Podcast. This is Jim Huntsman, the host, and I'm coming at you from the Broken Tine Studio right here in Clark Fork, Idaho. I got a really special guest for you today. We're going to be talking some late-season elk hunting strategies with expert hunter Joe Giglia, and he's from the Elk Bros, and I've got him on the line right now. And before we kick this off, I need to help Joe understand why we're going to talk about this subject with this here song.
Oh, you can tell my mom what I gonna do. You can tell the neighbor down the street. You can tell your friends or agent president just how I made a fool out of me. My wife already knows, she knows how it goes. It's not because I couldn't remember. I failed to really study the Blue Collar Elk Academy and did not attack this last September. But don't tell Joe from the Elk Bros, I just don't think he'll understand. And if you tell Joe from the Elk Bros, he might blow up and kick my ass. Ooh. That's right, y'all. Don't tell Joe. You don't need to know. Elk singer, eat your heart out. This is coming from the Western Huntsman. That's right, love it.
All right. I don't know if you can hear. We're able to hear that good enough. Stupid technical difficulties, man.
Oh, dude, but yeah, I'm gonna have to open me up a can, bud.
You're gonna have to. I didn't study enough. I didn't study on the Blue Collar Elk Academy, and here I am, tagged or elkless in Idaho in September. Instead of sleepless in Seattle, elkless in Idaho. What am I gonna do now? So I thought, as we speak, Joe, today is the 15th of November, and so my muzzleloader season for elk started today. And so now I've got until November 30th, I believe, to track down a bull and get that sucker on the ground, man. So I figured you'd be the guy to pick your brain and help me do that. How does that sound?
Well, man, after everything I've heard so far, Jim, let's see, I've heard the word legend, I've heard the word expert. I guess I better produce here for you, man. And if I don't, I'm just going to have to come up and kick your butt. That's all there is.
There's going to be a butt whooping, huh?
Going to have to open up a can, man.
The song says it, man. The song says it.
Oh, I got to have me a copy of that, man. That's too cool. I'm wiping tears from my eyes right now.
I know it was bad. It was bad. I'm wiping tears too after listening to
it. So you have from now until the 30th, huh?
Yeah, brother. I do. And so go ahead. What were you going to say?
Well, I'm real curious because right now here in Cimarron, New Mexico, and northern New Mexico, I think I'm wearing sandals, shorts, and a wife beater. Man, it is so warm here.
I know.
I don't know what it's like there in Idaho for you right now.
It's wet. It's just wet. Rain, and I feel like it's been raining my entire life. And we're talking before I hit record here, on this homestead. It's like nothing bad happens when it's nice weather. Nope.
Right.
When the gray tanks in the fifth wheel fill up, It is like pouring rain, freezing cold, and I have to go out and deal with it. And it's just it's a pain in the butt. But so we're supposed to be getting some snow, just for the sake of if that helps you. We're supposed to be getting some snow later this week.
Right.
And hopefully that's going to move the elk down a little bit.
Yeah, it just depends on the snow, because not all snows are alike, man. And, I mean, those guys will take those wet snows, those 4-6 inches, 8 inches, and it doesn't do a whole lot to them unless it really accumulates and makes it difficult for them to get to grasses and pushes them down, to where they're actually going to get less snow as they move down, get some sunny conditions on the snow that's going to do that, or they get, if it's one of those drier snows where it blows off those southern slopes and stuff, that kind of helps out a little bit. So not all snows are alike. Some of those wet snows are going to be just like that rain that you've had. I mean, what are your day temps like right now in this November so far?
So far, they're like averaging low 40s. I've got a really weird delay going on. Do you have me on speakerphone?
No, I don't.
Okay, let's maybe it's just on my end. Now I don't hear it. We're good. Okay. Anyway, yeah, we're averaging like 41, 45, with the exception of today. Like I said, that windstorm came in and we're like 55 today, and then it drops down. We have a low of 20 tomorrow night, and that cold front comes in, and so hopefully some moisture or snow.
Yeah, and as it starts to freeze things up and to make things more difficult, hopefully it will move some of those guys down, man. But what's been interesting is in our area over here, we've continued to have the low-lying areas, especially around creeks, that are still showing green grasses, just because of the type of warmth that we've had and that the moisture has been able to stay down in those areas. But you're different because you're having moisture in a lot of places, with all the rains and stuff that you've had. So that kind of adds a little bit different configuration. Plus, you're in northern Idaho, correct?
Yeah. Yep. Very far north.
Yeah. So you're really, there's things that your area brings to the puzzle that makes things interesting. Like, for example, when I tell people when they're hunting late season elk, it's all about covering area. I mean, it's about covering area with either optics, with your feet, or, with vehicles, and really getting a chance to look, covering areas, look into different places, trying to locate where these animals are. But for you in northern Idaho, glassing becomes a real difficult thing, right?
Oh yeah, for sure. Now, there's areas you could do that. For example, a couple of weeks ago, I glassed up a mule deer and got him. And that opportunity is very specific to that very small part of this very big unit. And so it is not the norm. I mean, when you're looking at these mountains, it's a jungle. I mean, anybody in North Idaho knows what I'm talking about. There's just not a lot of glassing opportunities. Before we get too far into this, Joe, sure, let's back up a little bit. I kind of want to hear about your season so far, with you and the Elk Bros and everybody over there. How'd your season go in September?
So if everybody knows that's been following us, we did something that we've never done before, and that is we took the show on the road. We left New Mexico and we went Colorado OTC. So we went through the exact process that everybody else out there goes through. I mean, we have never been out of New Mexico, and never, people start telling you about different units and different zones and different things in Colorado. No clue. We had zero clue with that. So basically, we were going through the same thing of trying to decide where we were going to go, and trying to figure, what type of unit, and then, where we would be in that unit, where we'd be able to find elk, what our multiple plans would be, the different types of places that we wanted to identify. And one thing, Jim, that is a lot more different in those areas of Colorado than here is the elevations are different, where we might start at like 6,500 or 6,000.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of these places in Colorado are they're already starting at like 8,000. So there's already like, a 2,000, elevation difference. So
Yeah.
you almost have to transfer and relate that difference. I mean, if we're finding elk 1,500 to 2,000 feet higher here, that's about the same thing that happens there. It's just you got to think differently. Where, if we're saying that we're finding elk at 10,000 feet, we're like really getting up there where, you might still have another 2,000 feet to go before you get timberline up there in Colorado. So,
gotcha.
It just kind of depends on the area. So, yeah, we went through this process, man. We did the whole thing, having to, go through all the licensing stuff, having to get the stuff for the ATVs, figuring out, instead of doing kind of the main base camp that we do in a lot of areas, because in New Mexico, when you get a hunt unit, that's your unit.
Yeah.
It's not like in Colorado where, if you're in unit 35, and you're not digging it right there, and it's an OTC unit, well, shoot, man, you pull up stakes and you can drive, 30 miles, 50 miles, 100 miles to another OTC unit. Sure. And go in that one. So
yeah, that's how Idaho is for the most part.
Yeah, so that's a whole different thing. So for us, generally, when we're in a unit, we pretty much base camp and pretty much set up a solid type of camp, and then we'll either use feet vehicle or four-wheeler to get to different areas as transportation, and then, go to the feet from there and go into those areas. So, and I mean, during the day, we could cover anything from, 5 to 15, 18 miles in a day, just depending on what it requires for that day and locating the elk, because that's our first goal when we get out there, is we're trying to locate, and then we're actually trying to find those critters, get on them. So now we had to transfer that to Colorado, where it's almost like it's great, but it's almost like it's not. That okay, so we're in this unit. If we don't like what we're seeing, well, we can jump and drive 20 miles or an hour and a half or 2 hours, and that has both its pros and its cons in it, because I think sometimes a lot of people might give up on an area that it's holding elk, and there's definitely pockets of elk that are going in there, because Colorado has the largest herd of elk in the daggum country. So, there are elk there. You can pretty much throw a dart and go anywhere, and you can find elk if you just work at it. So we went through that process. We decided to try to keep things within a certain travel distance from home. And, being where Cimarron is, we're right on the Colorado border pretty much. So there was a lot of area that we could access. And we went in, we made sure that our goal was to be mobile. I had already gone during the summer. Cole Wilkes and myself, one of our coaches, had gone up there, and in about 3 days, we covered, between the two of us, probably 5 different units. And the whole goal of going there was really, the main goal for me at that point was, I wanted to, see if there was some elk activity, but mainly was to see the lay of the land, because if you've been hunting elk long enough, you can pretty much look at an area and know what looks elky. Mm-hmm. I don't know. That's the only way I can, it's kind of like a fisherman can go to a lake, or you can go to a river, and you can kind of look around that, and you get an idea real quick of where those fish are going to lie. Totally. Right?
Yep.
And it's pretty much the same thing. And not only that, to be able to now relate the lie that you've been seeing on the topo maps and be able to actually put, the verticality to that, to put how big that country is to it. So, we did that part. We went out there and we did some boots on the ground, and, covered different areas to try to find out, where cow elk were. That's what I'm looking for when I'm scouting. I could care less where the bulls are. If I see some, that's great. But, my goal at that time of year is I'm really looking for cow elk. I want to find out where I'm seeing those tracks and where they're running and where their corridors are, and find them, the bulls are going to come. So we did that, and we set up 5 plans. We went out there. We all made sure we were very mobile, so that if we didn't find something, we could tear our camp down very quick. We could travel to a new area and yada, yada. So we get there, and on day 1 of our scouting, we divided and conquered. So, we had a large group of guys together. I think we had 9 of us all together. So we had our core bros, and then we had, one of our coaches, a good friend of mine, and one of our other bros had been hunting with us for a number of years. And between all of us, we split up into groups, and we went to different areas, divided and conquered, and we said, okay, let's see what we find on our scouting trip. And got out there. I happened to go an area that I thought was really a place that a lot of people, because when we set up camp, have you ever camped in Colorado in some of those areas?
No, not. I haven't camped in Colorado, no.
Let me tell you what.
I've camped in Utah, and I always look at like Utah and Colorado are there's a lot of similarities in terms of the landscape. So I think Colorado has a little higher elevations for the most part, but Utah's got some super high elevation too. And so I know what you're talking about.
Well, and the thing is in Colorado, you can camp wherever. I mean, you can, if it's on the side of a forest, you can camp, and you just pull off and camp. So whereas in New Mexico, that's not necessarily the case in some of these areas.
Is that because New Mexico, it's state land instead of federal Forest Service land, or why is that?
So if it's Forest Service, a lot of those Forest Services, unless you actually go hiking up in the country, they have like campgrounds set up for you to camp in. In state land, they absolutely have campgrounds that generally you have to pay to camp in, or it's designated for you to camp in. If it's state trust land, they'll have designated areas, which we're trying to actually stop some of that, because I think this concentrated camping really, really hurts a lot of these areas anyway. That's kind of how it is in New Mexico, whereas in Colorado, it's anywhere. And the roads in Colorado, the roads in Colorado are better than the roads where my subdivision is, man. It's like,
the Forest Service roads up there.
Oh my God! Yeah. So you got people driving up in buses, and I mean giant RVs, and huge trailers, and I mean it's crazy. I mean, the better the roads and the more comfortable that you can be, the more people are going to show up. And where we first picked out, that was the case. Now, let me just tell you this. Not all of the bros were extremly roughing it either.
What we had? Did we have some big fifth wheels, some huge wall tents? What are we talking? Or are you talking like motels?
Oh no. We didn't hit the motels, but one of my mentors, and if you listen to us, you'll hear Gilbert talk about one of his mentors, and one of the guys originally, R.C. Knox. One of the R.C. is a true cowboy, and R.C. was the first guy to ever give me a guide job back in the day, and he was also coach with me, a best friend of mine. But R.C.'s him and Chav, so he's about 10 years my senior, and this guy has, he's been the game manager on big ranches. He runs a big ranch now. So this guy has seen and been around more elk than most of us will ever in 3 lifetimes. So, so RC, when we met RC is pulling a fifth wheel, claimed to be a horse trailer, but I don't know if you've seen some of these.
Well, I've seen some pretty nice horse trailers. The living quarters up front, and 5-star accommodations.
Absolutely, man. So
helicopter pad.
He is pulling the Taj Mahal behind him, right? Mm-hmm. So we get into our area, and I've got ourselves so that we could be quick. We had a jumping jack trailer that we were using, and Cole travels with his truck is like, it's a traveling camp for him. He sleeps in the back of his truck. He's got it set up really, really cool. I mean, we had every type of thing going on there, but also that we could be mobile. And after we did our first day scouting, I go to this one area. I drive an hour and a half away to check this one area away from where all of these people were. I mean, we were just surrounded by folks, man. So sure. I was like, well, let me go see if this place is a little different. And I go and get there, and that morning, the area I checked was just chock full of sign. In fact, I have it on video. I called this bull in. Did not want to, Jim. That's one thing I didn't want to do on a scouting trip. I just gave a cow call, and this son of a buck just comes hauling into me.
Really?
And I have him, and I'm standing there in black pants, black shirt with my pack on, filming him at about 15, 18 yards.
Oh, wow.
And and I was like, okay, I think this will do. So,
what day was that? Was that early September?
So that was September 1st with the season opening on the 2nd.
Gotcha. Okay, cool.
Okay.
Cool. Sorry for the quick intrusion here, folks, but I got a birthday message I'd like to send out to my friend Christopher Banks. Happy birthday, buddy. 32 years old is looking good on you. Christopher is a great hunter, and he's one of our listeners, and I just wanted to wish him a very happy birthday from the Western Huntsman.
So I was like, I just wanted him to back out of the area, let him go. And then I started to look, and I bumped into 2 more groups of cows. And once I did that, I was like, I'm done. And I backed out. I drove an hour and a half back to camp, and I told the guys, I was like, look, I know we're all set up here, but I think we're in the wrong spot. So we end up, the guys are like, hey, if you say so. We pulled stakes. We spent a day moving all the way to this other area. So we really didn't get out until, what I told him is, what we're going to do is let's go there in the morning, and we'll all split and hunt, and then we'll meet and we'll say, should we move camp? Well, we did that, and absolutely we moved camp. And, out of our 5 core guys, we had the Mafia. Both the Mafia guys tagged. Gilbert tagged out. My goal really was to you know who Chav is, right?
Oh yeah, I know Chav.
And you know that Chav went through his battle with cancer last year.
Yep.
Or actually last 2 years, pretty much. And a year ago, Chav wasn't walking. So this year, Chav was in camp. We traveled. He was in elk camp, and I was just looking at videos just yesterday, man. And I look at those videos from where he's come from, and Jim, all glory be to God, bud. Unbelievable how far this guy has come. And
I'm so glad to hear that.
Yeah, it's true blessing, man. And Cole Wilkes, when we took off to go get everybody, he stayed there. I found an area to put him a blind. We knew he wasn't going to be able to still. I mean, he's able to get around in the hills, but he's using sticks in the hands. He's using hiking sticks.
Uh-huh.
But he was able to get in. It was about 300 or 400 yards to the blind. And so the goal was to get him in there and get him set up, get him in and out of the blind. And we had, and you'll see all of this when it starts coming out. But, Gilbert takes a bull, Manano takes a cow, Luis takes a bull, and Chav actually hits the bull, gets a shot. The bull was about 45 yards, quartering away, and as he squeezed off, it was a hard quarter, and as he squeezed off, the bull took a step and hit him in the leg instead. So,
oh, wow.
Yeah, it was a huge bummer. I still stayed looking for that animal we all, checked to make sure it wasn't a hit. We looked all that day. I actually went out the next day and still tried to find, we lost blood immediately and, did all kinds of gritting. I mean, all of us were out there. You ought to see my maps on my base map, how it looks, man. But I so wanted that to happen. I mean, it would have been nothing but a testament to what he's overcome. So we almost had 4 out of the 5 guys score on that. And so I think the bros went to Colorado, went to someplace we'd never been, and rocked it. I think
for sure. Yeah,
had an
3 out of 5.
Incredible season.
With another one hitting the leg, and Chav coming as far as he did, just being up there and able to install an arrow on an elk, whether it was lethal or not. I mean, that's saying a lot. That's a testament to, somebody that could take, this great physical challenge and overcome it. And I think that's a lesson for a lot of people out there that, get a blister and take the day off. It's amazing.
Oh, yeah, you just wait till you see the video on that. And, you forget how far until I started looking at the videos yesterday. And, there was a video, Jim, of him talking to the guys. He was talking to Manano and Luis and those guys. I'd done a recording because they were, sending him a lot of positive messages. And, he just said, guys, I'm working hard and I hope to see you in the future. And I mean, he had lost so much weight. He looked like he was in a concentration camp, and you look at that, and then you see him, first trying to walk, just trying to stand up, trying to stand up. I mean, because he became paralyzed, and just how far he has come. Absolutely, I wanted that so bad, man.
Yeah, I'll bet.
Yeah, and he, he felt horrible. He wanted, last thing he wanted to do was to wound an animal. In fact, he had another shot on an animal on the last day, but it was getting. He didn't take the shot. He had a shot opportunity that he could have taken, but he didn't because he was still thinking about the one that he had stuck, and so he never took the shot. So, he probably saw in the blind, probably saw more elk than any of us.
It's interesting how experience in past years and what you're talking about, how we passed on taking a shot on that bull. I passed on a shot too that and this bull was only 25 feet. Not yards. And I passed on him, man. And in years past, I would have taken that shot, but he was standing in a bunch of alder it's the same bull, and I've told this story a bunch on the show already, but it's the story where I bugled. This bull comes in. He's a big herd bull. All the cows are squealing and squawking, and this bull was on top of me within 30 seconds, and my bow got hung up on my shoulder camera, and I had to pull the bow out and untangle it, push my camera back, and then draw back. Well, by the time that happened, the bull was onto me and had moved off into some alderbrush, and I had a very small window where it was one of those things where it's an 80% chance that thing would have hit a limb and I would have wounded that bull. And so I didn't take the shot. And experience got me there, where years ago I would have let that arrow fly, man, and just hope for the best. And it's just interesting, the pain that happens when you wound a bull and never recover it. It sticks with you even in the heat of the moment like that. So that's a lesson within itself right there, what Chav did.
Yeah, and I mean, he's been practicing, and he's been shooting since before he could even stand up to shoot. I mean, he's been shooting sitting down because he couldn't stand up to balance himself. Jeez. So his shooting, that's why we had him sitting in a seat and a blind. And I mean, he has been shooting better than he ever has. And it was just one of those things that, we always talk about, that you can have everything perfect, but that animal can do something to change a situation. And it's just one of those things where, he focused on his point, and it's just, as soon as he put that pressure on the finger, it was too late. And that elk took a step forward and ended up catching him on the side of the thigh there. So, it's just one of those things. And, he, like I said, he had that another bull standing there, and it was getting, that evening light. And he was like, I did not want to stick an animal, with it getting dark and then us going through that again. He said I wasn't going to do it. So,
for sure.
good decision on his part, man. So.
Oh, for sure. So after all that, would Colorado be something you guys would do in the future?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and not only Colorado. I mean, I want to look at other OTC places. I want to take a look at what you guys look like there in Idaho. I mean, any place that might have an OTC.
Yeah.
Because
dude, come up to North Idaho and hunt the jungle with me. It'd be fun.
Hey, I tell you, man, the thicker the better, as far as I'm concerned. In the bow
I know.
season, so.
I love it. So, that's awesome. I'm glad. Go ahead.
It's absolutely on the table, man, because, one thing we kept hearing from people, I mean, when you take a look at the success that we've had over the years, most of the time we are 80% in our camp most of the time in archery with 100% opportunities. And we've had some guys that haven't finished, the deal up in the past.
Mm-hmm.
We've heard a lot of people, well, you're at home, why don't you take the show on the road? And, and I tell people, man, elk are elk,
that's the essence of what I wanted to, because I knew you guys, I knew 3 of you tagged out in Colorado, and I think that's what I was trying to pull out of you, is you guys have always hunted New Mexico, and I've heard a lot of people talking about, well, these guys only hunt there, and elk are different over here, and elk are different there, and well, they haven't hunted in my area. They don't understand the crowds, and I'm not talking about you guys specifically. This is what people say about everybody, right? And so, I'd like to see them do that in my zone. Well, you guys pulled up stakes, left New Mexico, went to a totally new unit that was very crowded, OTC Colorado. It doesn't get much more crowded than that. And 3 out of 5 of you put a bull down. Elk or elk, man.
Elk or elk. And when we went there, the unit that we went in, people specifically said, you better bring your own rock to stand on. I mean, it's just,
yeah.
And, there are going to be lots of people, but we found out the same thing. Jim, in all the days that I hunted this area, we actually killed, and I called in that first bull, and then we killed elk. The first place I called in a bull was probably 1 mile from all the camping. 1 mile, right?
Wow.
Where most people were driving right past this area.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
We were finding the same situations that we find, because where we hunt in New Mexico is extremely crowded. So we just apply those same techniques that when we hunt, and it was early season, and you heard it all the way across the West that the elk were silent, right? They just weren't talking,
you make a good point. I heard that a lot, but I didn't experience that at all.
Mm-hmm.
I had some great call-ins. It's an interesting thing, and I talked about this with Weldon Long the other day about putting blame on something, right? And a lot of people like to use the overcrowded units as blame as to why they didn't notch a tag. And well, you guys are listening to a guy who I can blame my no tag September this year on crowded units, because we had some crowded units. I don't think we get nearly as crowded as like Colorado does, but it was more crowded than I've ever seen it. Still called in elk. One reason or another couldn't have a shot, no clear shot. Or one day I went hunting with my buddy Steve. He called a bull right to me, and he could see him, but my angle, I couldn't see the bull. All I saw was the tips of his antlers. Anyways, it was a great day, and that was like September 2nd or 3rd, I want to say, and those. Yep. That was like the 3rd bull we had fired up. And so I'd get back home, and I did have limited time. I had some family in town for a week and a half in September, and some homestead stuff, so I didn't get out as much as I usually do. But the days that I did get out, I had encounters. And then I'd get home, and I'd jump on social media, and I'd see people, the elk are not talking, or the rut is running late this year, or the full moon is killing me, or all these non-residents are killing me. And it was just interesting when you're sitting there around the campfire reading some of this stuff a few hours after you just called a monster bull in that about ran you over, but you couldn't kill it. Yeah. I just circumstantially couldn't kill one. So, anyways, we could have a whole podcast on that topic.
Oh, absolutely, man. Yeah, it was. Yeah, and so it was. So I won't go any further than that. I'll just tell you, man, elk are elk, and that's part of the whole challenge of it all, is to figure out all of those elements and still make it happen. To me, that's the fun part. That's where you got to adapt and you got to overcome. That's where you got to think, and you got to think like those critters, and then you got to use your skill sets, and that's what makes hunting, you know. Yep. So we had a great season, man. And then, immediately after that was done, we had some coaches that headed to Hunt Wars over there, and they had an incredible, wait till that comes out. I'm real excited about that.
When do those videos come out?
So they probably won't come out until spring, I believe, is when that happens, because they were still doing hunt wars. It wasn't just the elk. They go, they did the antelope, then they did the elk, and then they did the deer, and then they're doing the white-tailed deer now, I believe, too. So, it's not like they just do elk and then they get to just put the show out. I mean, they have all of these different hunt wars that are going on, and then they try to get all the shows put together from there. So it's quite a deal. And I tell you what, man, some incredibly exciting stuff happened. And I just love the whole concept of that show, because they show the day by day grind. It's not this whack 'em and stack 'em type thing. This is real hunters and real hunts, doing it and working their butts off, trying to make it happen. And it's just really, really cool to see all of that, to see those conversations, and to see all the things that they have to overcome to try to make it happen. And they, just like a lot of people, you're going to see a lot of people don't make it happen.
Sure.
So there was blood drawn, so that's going to be a lot of fun. And we had some elk rose coaches in camp there, working with all of that. So it's just super exciting for us. So that happened. And then I started my guide season, and I went back to New Mexico and went into the second archery, and called in a beautiful 343 bull for a client of mine. He took it at 26 yards. And
343?
Yeah. It was awesome bull.
Sweet.
And then I go right into the rifle seasons from there, in October. And I was calling bulls. I mean, getting bulls to bugle all the way, I'd say till about, October 24th-ish, around there.
Yeah, that doesn't surprise me. I was, elk live all around my property here that we live on. We hear them bugling at night. All through October, we heard them bugling. It was crazy.
Yeah, absolutely, man. So, the season has been phenomenal. I've been 100% on my guide season. We've had a tremendous time with the growth that's happening with Elk Bros and the coaching aspect of it, and our own season together. The only thing I'd say is, man, I wish September was longer.
I know. I was, it was interesting. I woke up on like October 1st or something, and I'm like, what happened? Where did that month go? It was the fastest September ever. So
absolutely, man.
But so now here we are. We're mid-November. And I don't know how this plays out in other states. Sometimes, like I know in Colorado, they have like second and third rifle season, and then a late muzzle loader, and I can't remember how it works in like Utah and Montana. But in Idaho, if you have what is called the A tag, which basically gives you the September archery hunt. It gives you a few days in October on a rifle, and then it opens up this second half of November on the muzzleloader, right? Are you as excited as I am about hunting season? Man, it's here, finally, and you still have time to save some money on some great gear by the sponsors who make this show possible. So let me tell you a little bit about them. Scree Gear. Scree is extreme mountain gear, and this is my, third season using Scree, and if it sucked, I would have changed by now. Guys, Scree is high-performance hunting attire. It is scientifically proven. It's backed by a great company. I wouldn't recommend these guys if I didn't believe in them wholeheartedly, and I just keep them on the show because it's great stuff, guys, without breaking the bank. And that's what I really like about the Scree gear. Is it's every bit as good as that super expensive stuff that you can get out there, but you're not going to break the bank getting it and get all geared up for complete layering systems, all terrain, all conditions, gear designed to adapt to the weather. It's all backed by a lifetime warranty, and when you order online at ScreeGear.com, VIP sizing and exchange program will cover you if you order the wrong size. You can send it back for free, and they'll send you the right size. It's a great company, great gear. Check it out at ScreeGear.com, if I can spit that out right. And use promo code The Western Huntsman for 15% off and free shipping. That is one heck of a deal. Let's roll right into Hoffman boots. Hoffman boots, I believe this is like my 8th or 9th season running a pair of Hoffmans. I use the Explorers, and I love the Hoffman Explorers in the 8-inch. You can also get them in the 6-inch. Depends, that's just kind of a personal preference thing. Hoffman boots are, again, kind of like Scree, where it's a great boot without spending an absorbent amount of money, right? So that's why I use the Hoffman boots, is because I'm getting everything that I need out of a boot. These are rugged boots. They last a long time. Like I told you, I'm going on like 8 or 9 years with these things, and I'm only on my 2nd pair. They will keep you from sliding down the mountain because they've got excellent traction, excellent waterproofing, excellent everything. Go to hoffmanboots.com and use promo code Huntsman10 for 10% off. Phelps Game Calls, the oldest sponsor on this here Western Huntsman podcast. I am recording this on the opening day of archery elk season, and I've got all my Phelps stuff laid out, ready to go. I use the Maverick, I use the Renegade, I use the new metal tube, all of it. It's great stuff. It has never let me down. I've been using it for a long time. I was one of the first believers in Phelps Game Calls, and you should be too. Go to phelpsgamecalls.com. Use promo code Huntsman10 to save you 10% when on your order, and good luck out there. Here we go, September. And last but not least is Tacticam. Tacticam is a unique sponsor on the Western Huntsman podcast, and you can get all the Tacticam products at thewesternhuntsman.com, a portion of which goes to conservation efforts in fighting against the anti-hunting movement. So be sure to go to thewesternhuntsman.com and pick you up some cameras. You can get I recommend getting 2 cameras if you're going to self-film. Get the 5.0 and get the wide lens. Those 2 you can basically attach to yourself, or if you're in the states that allow it, to a weapon, and film your entire hunt. They also have cool products like the Spotter LR. They have the Reveal cell cameras, which are way cool. We should have those on the website here shortly. And go check it out at thewesternhuntsman.com/gear and let me know what you think. Let's get back to the show, and here we go.
Right.
So for those of us that didn't notch a tag in September and still want to get out there and chase some elk, I want to talk about that circumstance and what changes, whether, some states I know have late November seasons that are rifle hunts, some are archery, some are muzzleloader. Weapon doesn't really matter. We were talking about earlier, the snow and access to feed and
right.
weather and impacting this late season hunt. But let's walk through that. Like what do late season elk hunters, what do we need to do? What do we need to prepare for? And let's go back to this. You mentioned cover a lot of country.
Yes. Yeah. So that's the main thing, because you got to think about what's happening now. You have different animals out there now. You've got bulls that had, especially your herd bulls, man. I mean, those herd bulls lost about 200 pounds in body weight from where they were at that end of summer to where they were at about, October 15th or so. I mean, just because of all the work they did, once those herd bulls took over those herds and had to put in that work, they just really, they pound themselves, man, trying to keep and going through all of that breeding stage there. So they had dumped off right around, they'll start shadowing. It's funny. I like to think of it as a flip-flop. When you think about the early season big bulls, they let those young bulls go in and start gathering those cows up, and they kind of shadow on the sides. They just kind of stay in the area so that they're not having to do all the work. It's not their first rodeo, man. So they're trying not to burn all that energy as much as possible. Elk know that survival is up to them in conserving as much energy as possible. So they let those young guys take care of that and start gathering those cows, thinking that they're the man of the time, right? The man of the hour. And then once those cows start coming into estrus, they go in, knock them out of there, and then they start controlling the herd. Well, almost the exact same thing happens in flip-flop. So as things start to die down, as those cows are no longer coming in estrus, or they're coming in those multiples, right? But most of those cows have been bred. Those bulls, they go off because now they're just exhausted. And now here comes those young guys, or those next satellites in line, that go, and now they get to play the part again. And they're hoping that, either they're just get to practice being the man of the hour again, or, you have some cows that will come and recycle and get a chance to be bred. But let me tell you, those big guys are still not that far off, and they hear a lot going on like that. They will come in and they'll breed those cows again. So, I mean, we killed on one of our largest bulls ever a few years ago, a 404 bull.
Whoa!
On October 24th, because of another estrus cycle that came in.
That's crazy.
And
404. Yeah. I don't even know what that looks
404.
like. I'm gonna need to see a picture of this.
They just look a little thicker and a little longer, man. That's all it is.
Yeah,
just a little thicker,
awesome.
a little longer.
That's awesome.
But the point being that he didn't keep those cows gathered up. Those other bulls did. And then once everything went nuts because those cows came in estrus, that bull went in and started working again to breed that cow. So it's kind of a flip-flop. So now you have those big guys, and what they're thinking, they're getting off. And as those other bulls are all starting to peel off, all they're thinking about right now is, at first, once they dump off, they just got to recover, man. They just got to rest. They're like, a guy that's been beat up, been in a fight. He's gone 15 rounds, and he just needs to go lick his wounds. And that's what they're doing. And then once they get through that recovery period, now you start to see those bulls bacheloring up again. So,
and when does that happen? Is that about right now, middle November, start bacheloring back up?
No, you actually had some of that happening already. Probably around the 20th of October, you'll start to see a lot of those bulls starting to bachelor up again.
Okay.
But you'll get a lot of those younger ones that'll bachelor up. Maybe those big guys are still staying off a little bit. Maybe not. They might end up with one or two. It just depends on how much they've recovered, where they're at, and how they're feeling. But those bachelor groups are starting to happen. Now, right now, those bachelor groups are absolutely happening. And the later you go in this, even the better, because especially as snow starts hitting the ground, like what you're talking about, these guys have one thing on their mind. Where they had breeding as their top priority, feeding becomes their top priority. They just want to eat, man. They just got to try to put it on the body again, so that's what they're doing. And the good thing is this is, when those bulls first split off and they're all singled out again, it's real hard to find them, because they go in those holes. They don't travel too far because they are resting, they're eating, and their water is not too far away. So they're just staying in those places where you and I or anybody else do not want to go. I mean, I had a guide trainee that was working with me, and a great young man. And I talked about the areas to look and stuff because he was going on a hunt in Colorado. Well, he found the exact type canyon that I was talking about. And down in that canyon, in that gnarly canyon, he found the bull, like he should have found him down there. But they couldn't get to him, or they didn't want to get to him.
They couldn't or wouldn't.
Yeah, because there's a lot of guys that find those singles down in those gnarly areas, and they're like, man, if I kill one down there, how am I going to get it out?
Yeah.
Right? So they almost don't want to look in some of those places. And so we're hoping to find elk in some of the places that are more conducive to us than it is to them.
Yeah.
That's one of those things that happen. But as this starts to go and they start to bachelor up, they start to come out of those holes a little bit. Now they're easier to spot because there's more of them. They're not singled. They're not in those, in those gnarly holes buried down there. So now it's a little bit easier to find them because they are going to now be out later in the mornings and they're going to come out early in the evenings because they want to eat. They want to stay in those areas. And here's the tough part, though, still sometimes, Jim, is that because they're not with the big herd, if you're hunting cows, you're looking for large feed areas, really good grass, even areas maybe close to ag areas where they're going to come off, or where they're going out into private and then coming off back into the public to bed down, those type, or they'll just bed down in the private a lot of times this time of year because they're in these giant herds for these cows, and those giant herds will also have still some young bulls in them.
Sure.
That you might even still hear bugling a little bit.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but go ahead.
When you had made a post or somebody from Elk Bros made a post the other day that you can still hear some bugling, but don't misinterpret that and try to get into a bugle fest with them, right?
Yeah. Ain't going to work.
They're not rutting. They're not rutting anymore.
No.
What about let's say somebody's sitting there, they're on some public land, overlooking this meadow, but on the other side of the meadow, maybe it's private land, and there's some elk kind of meandering, feeding a couple of bulls or something. Would a cow call them over per chance, or maybe like a calf call or something like that?
You could try herd talk, and it kind of depends on this bachelor group and the age of that bachelor group. I think if it's more mature bulls, they might think it's some bull mews, because when you talk about cow calls, don't forget that bulls also, they do chirps and mews as well.
Yep.
So you can still try to do a little bit deeper sounding mew for them to think it's a bull over there possibly. And I tell you, if I had something where I had no opportunity because they were just staying on that property, why wouldn't you try it? Right?
Sure.
Why wouldn't you sound like a group or a herd that's moving off that's going on there, or sound like just a lone bull that probably gives a mew here or there? I'm going to throw the kitchen sink and try to find something that might get their attention. It's not like a long mew or anything like that is going to work. I don't even know that, because when I think about the calf mew, I'm not sure how much that's going to work. You might, if they are bulls that are still kind of bugling when they hear other elk, then I would probably use a calf mew. I definitely wouldn't use any kind of bull talk. I would probably use a calf mew because that's going to be the least threatening to them.
Sure.
That they might sound off to. But, I wouldn't count on that a lot. I would use those things to try to bring cows to me, that herd talk and those calf mews. And if there's bulls with them, some of those younger bulls still, if I was still trying to take one of them, it just depends if you're after any bull or if you're after a mature bull, or in the situation that you were describing where you see a particular group of bulls, it kind of depends on that age class. If they're a younger age class and I could get away doing maybe some insistent and some lost stuff and maybe a lost calf, I might be able to get them to come check it out.
Yeah. As to what you just said, for me personally, just because of the way this season has kind of gone down and all the work I have, when you live on bare land, you have two lifestyles basically. You have winter and then you have prepping for winter. So I'm not going to have a ton of opportunity, but so I'm not going to be picky. I'm not picky. I'll shoot a spike. I'll shoot a 404 or whatever size that bull you talked about. Why don't you come up here and guide me on one of those 404s?
Dude, I'd love to, man. Well, tell you what, I had I don't know how many opportunities at spikes in Colorado, but you can't shoot them, so that was different.
I could have shot one spike the first week this September, and all I did, I was just standing kind of up above this trail, this well-used trail, and I let off a couple of cow calls and just stood there. And like 8 or 9 minutes later, here comes two spikes. One got nervous and peeled off, and the other one came right onto that trail, 14-yard shot. If it would have been like the last week of September, I'd have sauced him. But
so we wouldn't be having the conversation about
we'd be having a different talk. We'd be having a different conversation. But it's so funny how I always go into September with all this new confidence and I'm not going to shoot a spike and whatever, and then September and reality hits me and I get my teeth kicked in, and it's like, man, why did you have that mentality? You should the freezer's empty. The freezer's empty, dude.
So Jim, I was real disappointed. I wanted to tell you, man.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, because I listened to your show when you were talking to the higher the group is called Higher Calling.
Oh yeah, Higher Calling Adventures.
Yeah. So I was listening with that, and they were talking about putting on a scenario, and you were asking them about guys going from, two different guys putting out calls like that and stuff. And you said, yeah, I never heard of that, but I thought that might be something. I was like, Jim didn't study, man.
I didn't.
He did not study, man.
No, I didn't. I didn't. And I'll admit it. Now that particular scenario where you create this fight or whatever, I have heard you guys talk about it on your podcast.
Yeah.
But what I was saying to them is I've never tried it, but I've always wanted to, but I'm usually hunting alone, so that makes that a little difficult. I guess I could stand on one side of the ridge and bugle, and then run across the other way real quick and bugle back at myself, but
I've totally done that.
I'll bet you have.
And not only done that, I'll change reeds when I do it.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That's fantastic.
I mean, I've worked on top of a ridge from one side to the other and worked up a sweat, man, just trying to and brought a bull into Luis. Actually called a bull all the way from private property across a fence and come into Luis and ends up shooting him at about 18 yards. A beautiful bull, and did just that. And I had to do it for like 45 minutes, man. I mean, it was.
That's fantastic. No,
yeah.
I'm going to try that next year, but. Yeah, getting back to your point, I did not go through the Blue Collar Elk Academy, moving, selling my house and moving out here, and I didn't have internet for a long time, and we didn't have power for a long time, and so I didn't do any of that. September kind of snuck up on me, and I had like this feeling of confidence going into September. And as each day went on, my confidence level was humbled, so to speak. And I found myself at the end of September going out those last few days. I was just almost in a state of desperation, covering a lot of miles, bugling into every nook and cranny on every mountain I could find, and it just did not come together. So, anyways. Yeah. I blame it. That's why I wrote the song for you, man. Because I didn't want to tell Joe that I didn't study.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to open up a can, man. So yeah, but so when you're talking about right now your situation up there, and you're hunting in the thick, and you only have so much time, what are your mountain two tracks like? I mean, I don't know how to ask the question for your area. Like for us, we call them roads, but they're not roads. I mean, we have ATV trails or vehicle trails that are more like river bottoms in some areas. But so what are yours like with it?
We've got a really good mix. We've got a lot of really nice Forest Service dirt roads, and that will trickle all the way down to trails. Basically, and you've got a lot of old logging roads. There's lots of access. There's lots of, I live right in between two really good hunting units. Like I live on the river that separates the two, and you can go north into that unit and deal with grizzly bears, or I can go south and have a much less chance of running into a grizzly bear. And so I tend to go that south. way. I'm going south.
Yeah, right. You and me both.
So, the point is, until it starts snowing really heavy, I've got tons of access and tons of square miles of public land to go hunt.
So if I'm you, man, I'm on those roads. Is there any snow on the ground at all, or is it up in that area? Up
high, there's a skiff so far, and which is rare. Yeah. This time of year, it's usually a lot more, but it's just been kind of a different kind of year. So,
yeah. So I'm hitting those roads and I'm looking for track. I'm looking for anything that's crossing in areas over there. And I'm taking a look at it. There's a whole lot of tracks, or a lot of tracks, and they're smaller tracks. So in other words, there's a herd of cows. If it's a herd of cows, I might be able to find a bull in that. It's going to be easier to track them. I should be able to find out if they're fresh. It's going to be able to, they're going to go to areas of bigger feeds, so I can pretty much gauge where they're going to be. I might try that. Or am I finding where it's only one, or it's three, or it's four tracks, and they're bull tracks, or larger tracks that are together? And you've been hunting elk long enough that, that you can tell the difference between that heart-shaped track of those cows that are a little smaller, and those big, more like I call them, more like bovine calf look, to them, those bigger bulls,
squared off a little bit.
Yeah. And just much bigger than those cows are, as far as the tracks go. So, if you're seeing three of those, now you've got a little bachelor group, and you kind of know where they are and where they're moving. And then now you start thinking about, where is the possible food here? Now, here's the problem, though, is when you're talking about food for bulls at this time of year, and when they're in their smaller bachelor groups, they don't need those big areas. They don't need the same amount of feed area size that herd does when they're out there. So,
good point.
Yeah, they're going to be in areas that drain into flatter bottoms, or benches that hold moisture longer. Anything that kind of flattens where the sun can get to it, and you get a little bit better grass, or have better grass at one time of the year, because that dry grass is still carrying all those nutrients in there. So if you have any places, like when you talked about logging roads, if you have any places that are logged areas, any place with breaks in the canopy, any place where you had, logging that happened that has smaller trees, any burns, burn fringes, anything like that. If I could find something that is going to help me to locate elk, and it's going to start eliminating country, because that's the hardest thing to do right there in northern Idaho for you, because you're talking about everything's a forest. Yep. Well, start asking yourself, well, what's not? Like you talked about that one area, the one area being unique that you found.
Yep.
Those are areas that I want on my radar, because they're unique in that they are open. They are going to have grasses. That might be a place that's a little hidden gem, that animals are going to come in to feed, and a place that I might be able to see things in there, or an area that I can find track coming in and out of, that I might be able to start working and then reverse engineering where those critters are right now. Because at this time of year, they don't have to go as far. They're not rutting elk. They're not elk that are chasing cows, running away from other bulls, and just covering all this country. Some of these bull elk and these groups of elk can live in the same half mile to a mile now with no issue, because they don't need that much feed anymore, and their water's not going to be that far away, and they're going to have thermal regulation.
Okay, so let me ask you this: I'm cruising along on one of these dirt roads, and I find, and this happens a lot, you find this area where the elk are clearly crossing that road,
right,
and they're going up. They've cut a big trail, and I determine those are mainly bull tracks.
Okay.
And let's say I stop right there, I park right there, and I pull up either whether you're using Base Map or Onyx or whatever, and I could just look for areas on there that'll kind of give me some telltale signs as to where those bulls are probably heading, because...
Yeah,
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, absolutely you can. But let me tell you what I'm going to do, man. I'm pulling the the four-wheeler off, I'm throwing my pack on, and I'm going down. I want to see where these guys are traveling, how fresh this is, if there's any fresh sign, if there are any droppings, any urine, and I'm going to follow it out to find out, is this bull's going to an evening feed, to a morning feed? Because a lot of times they will kind of morning and evening feed in the same area and just kind of go up and bed down someplace where they've got their security and just come out, where it's not. Again, it could be within a half mile. I watched two bulls that I found, and they were feeding just on the edge of this scrub oak bridge down in the grass, and they were feeding down in the big thick grass. And then once the daylight came, they would hike up 200 yards up into that scrub oak on top of the ridge and bed down all day long. They'd get up and eat a little bit amongst that scrub oak, eat some of the grass, and bed down. And then as afternoon come, they'd go right down, feed right back where they were before down there. Now, there was a pond not even another 400 yards from there, so they had everything in that area. If they can find that situation and not get bumped from it, they're just fine, man. So so if I were you in that situation where I found a clear area where it was a work trail going, I'm dogging it. I'm going to find out exactly where they're going, whether it's going to a bed, whether it's going to an area. Are they feeding? Does it start to meander? What's that area look like? What's my elevation at right now? Because the elevation that I'm finding these guys at is probably the elevation that I'm going to find other bull elk at as well.
Sure. That makes sense. Okay. What about, I've heard some mixed opinions on this, but wallows are kind of irrelevant this time of year. Am I wrong with that?
Yeah, they are. I mean, they might be a water source.
Sure.
Yeah, but they're not. If you think about what the purpose is of the wallow, before to cool them off, it's for thermal regulation. It's trying to get mud on them, so they can control the insects, and it's to get their scent out there as well, and they're drinking water. So it's like got multifaceted that right now all it's gone to is just water for them.
Okay. I'm just making sure because I had somebody, an old timer telling me the other day that, just go out and sit on a wallow. And I know where all the wallows are, and it just didn't make sense to me.
Well, people still put cameras on wallows, which are what? They're just springs, right?
Yep, basically.
And they're going to get pictures of bull elk coming in there this time of year, and before the rut happens too, because that's the area the bulls are in at that time, and they're going to drink.
Sure.
That's another thing. I want you to think about places that you found rubs, and I'm not talking about rut rubs. I'm talking about those layer rubs, those pre-rut rubs, where those bulls are just, trying to get rid of that, the velvet off of their horns, where they're just bedding all the time. You're going to find rubs, like 40 rubs within, so many hundreds of yards in there, because they're just bedding and staying in those areas. Some of those areas are some of the same layers that they end up going back to.
How do you tell the difference between a rut rub and just getting rid of velvet? Is there a way?
So, yeah, absolutely, man, because generally a rut rub is going to be, that's where they're displaying. And a lot of times they're going to be on the fringes of little parks. They're going to be places as in corridors where they're going from, a bedding down to a feed area where they encounter other bulls that are chasing them and they're displaying too. So most of the time they go and they just rip apart a jack pine, or they tear up a juniper, or they trash one of those and try to tear down one of those, young pines. Whereas when you look at those pre-rut rubs, those velvet rubs, they're generally bigger, thicker trees, and there's multiples, and they're going to be up in those darker areas or around, right real close to those bedding areas. And you'll see them on ridges, up there on those ridges where it's, where those bedding areas are. And you can just find rub after rub kind of in a line, whereas those rut rubs, those demonstration rubs are, the only place you really see a whole bunch of them together is like when they're down there in their night beds.
Sure.
And and they're just blowing up everything around there, demonstrating, or they're pissed off and trying to, just trying to get rid of some of that testosterone at the time. So, when you start seeing those blown up jack pines that are snapped and all the branches are off of them and stuff, those are those rut rubs. Whereas when you find those, you find those 4-inch in diameter, trees, 5-inch diameter, and they just really rub those off in the middle part, and you find another one like that, those real thick ones that are up there by the bedding areas, those are those pre-rut rubs up there on the side of those ridges.
Okay, that makes sense. I've never really put that together. I've never thought about that. I told you I wasn't very smart. Let me describe the cycle, and maybe you can correct me as to what your opinion is on it. But this time of year, bulls are essentially laying down midday, and they're feeding just before sundown, and they'll feed into the night. They'll lay down again, and then feed as morning approaches into the first hour or so of daylight, and then they're going back to their bedding area. Is that about accurate?
Yeah, the only thing is they may be out a lot longer than that first hour, and what they might do is they might get out of that open area, but they'll still be feeding in the trees, or they'll be feeding on those ridges, or they'll be feeding in those transition areas. They're going to be feeding a lot more right now. They'll even be feeding as they're going up on the sides of the ridges, and they're not really that not that anxious just to go and bed down like what they were before when they were with the cows and needing that rest. Their life is a little bit more leisurely right now. So, that's like in the evening, they're going to be up in the afternoons, and they might even get up during the midday and just start feeding a little bit and then bed down again. But they're going to get up and they're going to start feeding from the moment they get up. They're going to find little grasses, different things, and they're not going to spend that time just trying to run down to a night bed. That's not what's happening now. No, gotcha. They're really taking their time and they're feeding there. And, we talk about the golden hour, that golden hour being that, and actually it's not an hour, especially if there's a full moon. It might be the last 15 minutes of shooting light in the evening. And then, first thing in the morning, it's that first, it probably is that first 45 minutes to an hour of that morning that you get a chance, unless there's a lot of pressure. Then, they might only be out there 15 minutes, a half hour before they're in the trees. But they're going to definitely start feeding more the whole time that they're doing that. And what's so good about them right now, though, Jim, is when they are feeding, their head is down in that stuff, and they are feeding hard. I mean, they're so much more stockable at this time of year. And the later, the better, like I said. The more that you get into November, I honestly believe that the best time to kill a big bull is like December 4th to December 10th in that area.
Really?
I just think they are so vulnerable because you got snow on the ground where you can spot them. They're trying to find as much food as they can, and they're feeding all the time, and there's more of them together, so they're easier to spot. So, and they are feeding hard, man. I mean,
so
they're almost oblivious sometimes.
So if this muzzleloader thing doesn't work out for me,
no, we're not planning on that, dude. We're not.
Surely not. But let's say that I know it's hard to believe, but let's say I don't notch my tag.
Okay.
Okay, it's not that hard to believe. We have almost a week or something of archery in December, so I might have to call you back and be like, okay, now we talked about November, now we're talking December. No, I'm just kidding. We're not going to do that, but I'm really looking forward to it. I appreciate. I know we're running long here. I appreciate the info, man. Is there anything else, like behavioral wise or just circumstantially this time of year, that you think people would benefit knowing? As we're talking about these late season hunts and trying to kind of get these last minute tags filled and stuff like that.
Yeah, the only thing I would tell them is a lot of times people forget about the fact that we always talk about food security and water, those type of, or breeding when we talk about things. But a big part of elk's existence and being able to not expend energy is being in the right place for thermally as well, to be able to help their body heat. So, when we have that hot September, they're in those north and northeast slopes. It's almost the opposite when you get those freezing temps, man. So they're going to get on those they're going to get on those southern slopes where, the snow is going to be a little bit more melted, where it gets good sun. And you can, if you find areas like that, and again, I know it's difficult where you're living there, but in a lot of areas where they do have a lot of those ridges and open ridges, stuff like that, I would really look at those and really be trying to locate animals on there. And if there's snow, they're a little bit easier to see in some of that now because of, it's easier to see those shapes and to see those colors in there. So remember, it kind of flip-flops a little bit.
Yeah.
Their thermal regulation is going to be about, getting some sun on their body rather than getting shade on their body. So that's something to think about.
No, that's a great point. I didn't even think about that, but you're exactly right. They're going to be looking for warmth versus usually when I'm chasing elk, they're looking for those nice dark timber, cooler areas, and so those are some great tips, man. Tell us.
The other thing.
Oh, go ahead.
Sorry. The other thing I say too, Jim, is don't leave out some of those areas that are not mountains, because a lot of these guys, I know here in New Mexico especially, we have a lot of them that head out onto the prairies, and sage flats and areas like that where a lot of people don't even go to look for them anymore out there. And it's easy for them to get in those little coulees and stuff like that, and nobody ever knows they're there. There's feed out there. They'll have water within a half mile. So don't forget to look out in those flats, man, as well.
Yeah, I'm not going to find a lot of that in North Idaho, but that's a great tip. But we do have some agricultural areas, and I know we should start seeing those elk kind of show up on those right about now.
Yeah, especially the big herds.
Yeah. So well, cool, man. I'm excited. I'm gonna go load this muzzleloader. I haven't shot a muzzleloader since 1999 until I just bought this one. I just bought it a few weeks ago. So
hey, whatever keeps you in the woods, right?
Exactly. My wife wasn't super impressed. I picked up a muzzleloader, but I was pretty happy about it.
That's awesome.
So we'll try it out here, and I'll be heading out tomorrow and most of the week for this, and see what we can make happen. But I've still got a big. I need to track down a whitetail. I've got a bear on my property that I'm trying to get. He's not falling for my bait barrel right now, but I have until the 30th for him too. So it's going to be a busy few weeks, man. I'm going to have to keep you posted. Well, how about you? You got any more hunts this year, or are you done?
Yeah, I have one more. Bull elk hunt still here in December.
Are you guiding or are you hunting?
Yes, I'm guiding.
You're guiding? Cool.
Yeah.
Cool.
So this is pretty much my, once I get back, once October hits, in fact, at the end of September is pretty much I'm guiding hunters from that point. So I don't get a whole lot of time for myself. I'm really hoping, I don't know, we'll see. I'd like to see if I could get Chav in the vehicle and maybe take a trip over to see our brothers in Texas, maybe chase some pigs over there. That would be exciting and fun. So
that'd be a ball.
We'll see what happens. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that'd be a riot. Yeah, you can. Yeah. I've seen they're just so overrun with them down there. They have all sorts of different ways to get those dang things, man. It'd be a ball.
Oh, and it's such good eating too.
Yeah, oh yeah,
it's incredible.
Yeah, totally.
Yep.
So, well, cool. Elk Bros.
Yep.
Where can people find besides Instagram and Facebook? It's all at the Elk Bros, right? Is it the Elk Bros or just at Elk Bros?
Yeah, so you actually won't even find us on Facebook. We're on Instagram. So our Instagram is Elk Bros, ELKBROS.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to find anything and all things Elk Bros, you can just go to elkbros.com and find everything Elk Bros there. Our academy's there. All of our store items are there. We have some stories that I need to update now after the season's done, and I'm starting to get some time. I'll be able to get on that. And we have our Blue Collar Elk Hunting podcast, that we were coming out every week on Tuesdays. We are now coming out bi-weekly. So we're coming out every other week now, still on Tuesdays we're releasing.
Mm-hmm.
But man, Jim, it just, you know how much work one of these shows are in doing all this. And there's so much more. I mean, we actually have our own grunt tube coming out here real shortly. It's already in production.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll be introducing that. And I'll be excited to introduce that to you here in due time.
Sounds good, man. I know exactly. I took like a 3-week hiatus from releasing shows because I couldn't get guests, and then when I got a guest, my computer crashed, and I mean, it was a long. It was like, okay, I guess we're taking a break here. But yeah, no, that's great. I encourage people to check out the podcast and check out Blue Collar Elk Academy. That sucker is in depth. I went through it last year for most of it, but I didn't go through it again this year, and that is why I'm sitting here elkless in Idaho. So I appreciate it, man. And I'll just for those of you guys listening, I'll put all the Elk Bros stuff in the show notes. Check them out. Check Joe Gilia out, and you guys, I guarantee you, it is always beneficial as a hunter to listen to Joe and the boys over at Elk Bros. For sure, it's gone a long way for me, for sure. Well, good deal, man. I appreciate it. Thanks again for coming on, and let's just keep in touch. I want to know how this December hunt goes. I'd be super curious about that down in New Mexico, and we'll take it from there. And have a great Thanksgiving, by the way. Yeah, you too, man. All of us. I mean, you think about where the world is these days, all the negativity out there. Man, let's all just be part of the solution, not part of the problem. Go enjoy our family and be happy for all the blessings that we do have. Man, great advice. Great advice. I love it. I love it. So, and this is a great time of year to kind of get behind that message, and we should have more good days ahead than bad days, and it's really dependent on us and our attitude, and hopefully we're getting there, man. So absolutely. Thanks again, brother. You're welcome, Jim. Appreciate it, man. Bye. You made it all the way to the end. Thank you so much for tuning into the show. We sure appreciate your support. This is Jim Huntsman signing off and reminding you to check us out at Instagram at The Western Huntsman and on Facebook at The Western Huntsman. And you can also check out the website at thewesternhuntsman.com. Thanks again. We'll see you guys next time. Stay Western, and I'll see you on the mountain.